and the day I was there, they showed this Chappelle sketch. Remember the time haters, right? Who go back in time to hate, and so they had these pimped out guys, Chappelle and Charlie Murphy, and was the short one, Vanilla Rollins. You know, they're all Jerry curled out, pimped up, and they're talking to Slave Master. And, you know, the slave master's like, you know, I'm going to whip you. And they're like, no, you're not a gun. And then the slave says, from behind says, well, since y'all are from the future, when are we going to get free? And Dave says, how about now? And then they shoot the slave master. And Dave finds my most challenging interviewee. I mean, there's so many reasons why that would be. I mean, like, you know, I interviewed J-Lo, and it's like really hard to keep in mind what the next question is going to be. Because I'm like looking at her, and then she smiles, and I'm like, I completely forgot that. You know, Beyonce kind of had that same sort of thing happen too. I mean, you know, Courtney Love was like really pissed off about something else the day that she came to talk to me. And she was totally like riding this wild steer of like, I'm about to leave, screw you, like, fuck that question, no drugs, and everybody in the control room was like, she totally seems like she's on drugs right now. You know, and I'm like, feeling like I'm dying. This is such like this combat mode of like, I don't want to be here, I'm going to leave in 5 more minutes, and I'm like, I'm not going to get her to stay in the chair. And then I started talking to her about sex, right? And the question was, because she's kissed all these guys in rock and roll, like, who is the best kisser in rock and roll, which obviously we're actually means something else, but we're going to start here and work up to that. And without even working up to that, she just jumped right to like, well, actually, I'm better than all of them, right? What are you talking about? Like, well, you know, she's like, you know, girls who aren't pretty have to work harder for it, right? So we show up, we bring the party, rather than the pretty girls who, you know, want you to bring the party to them. Which is actually a really sort of interesting comment. And that sort of like broke the ice and opened her up, and after that, she was more chilled out. I mean, in terms of the other side, you know, it's just been a lot of incredible people. Jay-Z is always a great interview. I've talked to him many times. Really, really smart guy. Guy who's willing to answer any question. 50 Cent also answer any question. You know, I mean, I appreciate guys who are like, they're not afraid of anything. You know, you go anywhere, you can challenge them, they don't feel defensive or what have you. You know, I had a couple of interesting interviews with T.I. I remember talking to him, like he did the vid, and then I talked to him and I'm like, can you promise us that you're not going to go back, that you have changed your life? And he's like, yes, I made significant changes in my life, and it will never happen again. And then 3 months later, he got arrested for the same shit. Come on. I mean, you know, Questlove is brilliant. You know, Tupac was a great interview. It was sort of amazing just being around him and like listening to him. You know, I remember having a couple of great conversations with Biggie. So I mean, I've just been blessed to have, you know, conversations with a lot of people who shaped hip hop. I just personally have had less experience in rock and roll, but some of those people.
The next question is, what are your thoughts on a post-racial society versus a post-racist society? How would you propose we move past either race or racism embedded in our social structure?
Who's that from? What's your name?
Caitlin.
Caitlin, thank you for the question. I don't think that we're in a post-racial society, right? That suggests that race no longer exists or no longer affects our world, right? That's not the case. I mean, race is still deeply important in deciding who gets ahead and who doesn't, right? And that doesn't mean that no black person can get ahead and every white person does. But the likelihood of you getting ahead far greater than the next person, right? benefits to you, and you obviously give away some advantages of being female, right? So the boy next to you, nice as he is, he has some advantages that you don't have, right? We're not in a post-racial society, we're not in a post-racist society. We are in a white supremacist society where the advantages that we talked about before, the advantages of white privilege accrue repeatedly throughout your life. So you are probably not a racist person, I assume, since you're here. Since you're me, you're not a racist person. But that doesn't mean that you're going to reject the benefits of white privilege, or that you even could reject the benefits of white privilege, because they come to you in subtle and obvious ways all the time. I mean, even like sort of gross example, but just something that seems obvious to people. You remember The Help? See that movie, The Help? Right? Horrible. I went to see it so I could brick it, right? Like, well, you could go see Django so you could brick it. And I'm like, Spike Lee, I hated that shit, but you didn't see it. White privilege affects her at every turn, especially like, just notice like right at the beginning. She goes to apply for a job as a writer. She has no experience. She gets the job. Despite no experience and not even knowing how to apply for a job, she gives a letter of rejection as a letter of recommendation. And she gets the job writing about how to, home economics, right? So she immediately has to go to the black person and ask her, how do I do this job? She doesn't deserve the job, but white privilege got her the job. And the black woman who actually knew how to clean your house, spick and span, went to the job she would never get. So it's just sort of a gross example of white privilege at play. How do we move past the race or racism embedded in our social structures? There's no easy answer for that, and I don't know how we do that, because it's so enmeshed in the fabric of society, right? The advantages of white privilege are so invisible at this point, It's going to be difficult. It's not about sort of just blindly not paying attention to race anymore, because the advantages have already been baked in from decades and decades, if not centuries, of the different power dynamics in this country. I don't know. I don't know. I don't see anybody sort of proposing any easy solutions, or I would have already read about them. And what book you need to read. But it's a huge issue that we are going to be dealing with for a long time. Du Bois talked about, the color line being the issue of the 20th century. Well, he was half right. It's also this century too. Barack Obama's election is indicative of something, but it's not indicative of everything, right? Because, Sean Bell and Amadou Diallo and Oscar Grant and Trayvon Martin and many, many, many others would say, well, it's not everything. So it's the best that I can do.
All right, next question. What do you think about Rob Parker's comments on Robert Miller's blackness?
Yes. Who asked that? Oh, yes. How are you? Good. We had a good talk about Janko. I was really disgusted by what Rob Parker said. Is everybody aware of what we're talking about? Rob Parker was a commentator on an ESPN show called First Take, where they would talk about their opinions about sports. And one day he said, RG3, the superstar rookie quarterback for the Washington Redskins, he said, I'm hearing weird things about this brother, that he's not down for the cause, and he has a white fiance, and he might be a Republican, and he might be this, and he might be that. All of it, except for the white fiance, was total circumstantial evidence, right? There was nothing concrete in what he was saying. He's not down for the cause, and I wonder if he's a real brother. It's like, really? We're still talking about this in 2013? His perspective was disgusting. There's no place on ESPN for that. It's